Hey guys, this is BaseP86. Wanted to do a little video response to BigFatGreekAtheist, who was the first person to actually post a video response to one of my videos, and I feel really honored, frankly. I appreciate your response to you, my friend, and I also appreciate everybody's comments on my video, why are all people born atheists? But I want to just clarify some of my terms. This may be in a two-part video series, so if I run out of time, which I think I am going to do, I'm going to make two videos. I need to get under 10 minutes here. So I want to clarify some of the points that I made, because I don't think some of them were clarified enough, and I also want to give additional reasons as to why I don't think all people are born atheism, and as to why I think there's a huge problem with the way people define the term atheism as well. But basically, BigFatGreekAtheist, your first point was that the general definition for atheism is a lack of belief in God, and that's it. And then you subsequently said that whenever a person says that I lack belief in God because of a lack of sufficient evidence, they're stating the reasons for their atheism, and those reasons are not included in the definition. I want to clarify that I was actually not saying that there was an equivocation within terms because the reasons were included in the definition. I was saying that the fallacy of equivocation existed within the prerequisites for atheism. Basically, and then subsequently that would bring about two different types of atheism. That's what I really meant, and I apologize for not clarifying that. But basically, let's briefly take a look at some of the other belief systems and some of the reasons as to why they believe what they believe. For example, if you were to ask, say, a Christian, why are you a Christian? And they would say things like, well, I go to church, I listened to what the preacher said, and I accepted what he said and prayed to God and all that stuff. I also believe that there is good evidence that Jesus' life, death, and resurrection was historical. So I think my faith is a historical fact, almost, give or take, whatever. I also believe that there is such a thing as absolute truth. If you take a look at all these different reasons, just ask yourself, are all these reasons contradictory or mutually exclusive? Keep in mind, I'm not asking if they can be refuted. We're not talking about truth here. We're talking about the validity. Are they all mutually exclusive? Are they contradictory of each other? They're not. They're all consistent with each other. They can still be refuted, but that doesn't mean that they are contradictory to one another. We're talking about the validity, not the truth. Not the truth of the actual claims. If you take a look at a Muslim, for example, ask them, why are you a Muslim? They will say, well, I believe that the Quran is the self-evident revelation of God. I also believe that Jesus never died on the cross. It only appeared to the Christians that he was crucified. Meaning that I believe in a monadic concept of God, but I do believe that there is such a thing as absolute truth. All those different kinds of claims, are all those general different kinds of claims mutually exclusive of each other? Not at all. They can still be refuted, but that doesn't mean that they are necessarily contradictory by nature. But interestingly enough, atheism does have this kind of problem. It has two mutually exclusive types of prerequisites that must be there in order for an atheistic position, if you will, to be met. And I'll clarify the further problem that I see with this. But I will move on to your next point. Your next point was that the two types of atheism that I was referring to are implicit atheism and explicit atheism. And I'm glad that you actually brought this up. I'm very familiar with both definitions. For those of you that may not know, implicit and explicit atheism were defined by George H. Smith, who I believe was also an atheist. Interestingly enough, let's take a look at his definitions for both terms. Basically, he defines implicit atheism as the absence of theistic belief without a conscious rejection of it. With explicit atheism, he defines it as the absence of theistic belief due to a conscious rejection of it. So even though the conscious state of the particular atheistic individual and the reasons for their atheism are not necessarily used in the general definition of atheism itself, they're still included within the definition for George H. Smith's definition for both of those terms, implicit and explicit atheism. More specifically, the state of their conscience. So overall, the state of conscience is the ultimately defining point as to what an atheist is. Basically, that's what George H. Smith is basically telling us in both of his definitions. The next point that I want to move on to is looking at the actual definition for atheism itself and looking at its Greek origins. Basically, there are three parts to the term atheism. One is the prefix, two is the root, and three is the suffix. The prefix is a, which means negation, and I've been told this definition stuff who knows how many times. It was in religion class and philosophy class, and we were taught a little bit of Greek in that too. But a means negation. Theos means God. That's the root. And then that's where the root came from the Greek word theos. And then the prefix, the suffix, if you will, is the ISM, which basically stands for a belief or a set of principles or a specific proposition. Let's take a look at the definition for agnosticism. Just keep those in mind, the prefix, suffix, and the root. Let's look at the definition for agnosticism and a couple of other terms that are defined with an a prefix and an ism suffix. Agnosticism, generally defined, is the proposition or belief system that claims that God is unknowable, which is strong agnosticism, or the more weak definition, belief system in which the status of God is unknown. The status of God's existence is unknown, but is not necessarily unknowable. These are basically the two different general definitions of agnosticism. But notice that with the term agnosticism and any other term that has an a prefix and an ism suffix, the prefix negates the root. Agnostic negates, it's basically the knowledge. A negates the knowledge. Ironically, with atheism, it's not the same thing. I'll clarify that because I'm about to run out of time, but I'm going to stop there. Be prepared for part 2. I will continue on with where I'm talking about agnosticism compared to atheism, but stay tuned for part 2. I hope you guys enjoy this. Take care.